David Moore of Dallas Morning News. This is for Jerry and Steven. When you look at also acquiring Gilmore and Cooks with the 2 fifth-round picks, how would you assess this class overall, and do you view them as part of this class? I know you always talk about the connection.
Yeah, I can start. Not only Cooks and Gilmore, but also Hankins. We gave up a sixth this year to get Hankins last year. So, we do consider them. I mean, we would have had those picks, and I think they were value picks that have really helped our football team. But that's in the past. Obviously, we're very, satisfied and fired up about our draft class. I mean, at the end of the day, I think we accomplished about everything we wanted to get done. And, there's no question we made our football team better. And, we're still doing something that we feel is almost as important as the draft, which is the college free agents right now. And I feel like from all the reports we're getting, that's going really well too. So all in all, I think we hit all the bases throughout the draft. And like I said, I think we're having a successful college free agency as we speak, and overall a success.
Yeah, I agree with Steven. And I don't think I could add anything to it. I know it's easy to say. There's no doubt in my mind that we've got better players today than we had yesterday in general. A lot of these guys, we're going to have them on the field. That's a given almost, the way the thing is structured today, which I like and agreed with. I'm talking about pro football. But the most important thing is I see the makeup of this sheet that are going to have places and be making plays for us this year. So the immediacy of it, the fact that certainly you've got to look at long term. Not most of, but I'd say 70% of what you look at when you put a draft board up or when you put a look at a player is not about the first year. When you're looking at it, it's about the future, because you can't think like that, because you've got to put so much of it together each year. But still, to me, the immediacy of the players we drafted and how they're going to help us right now on the field is the best thing I can say about this group.
Todd Archer of the ESPN. For all of you guys, can you just talk about the emotions of the moment when you guys called on Deuce and had Chris come over, and where that came from and what that was like for you guys?
I've never had an experience like that in the draft room. At least for me.
Yeah, for me, it was one of the coolest things I've ever been involved in, is to have a guy that we value so much as an employee and the work that he does, and then to have so much positive be said about his son, and then to watch the tape and see just how impactful he can be on the field, and then have that moment to share that, because it's all about family. When you talk about the Cowboys, you talk about football, and you talk about everything else, you talk about family. And when you get that opportunity to share that experience, and with a really good player that's going to help us, that's what it's all about.
I take my hat off to Chris. He handled it with such class throughout the process. When we had players that were coming up in and around where Deuce was rated, he had nothing but great things to say about the players that were on the board in and around him. And, at the end of the day, we had some meeting sidebar as we were making the final decision, because we knew it'd make him uncomfortable, and we have so much respect for Chris in terms of what he brings to the table, also knowing, that he wanted this to be, he didn't want to influence in any way, one way or the other. And, it was a surprise to him as well when we had made the decision, between Mike and Jerry and Will and myself, that was going to be our selection. It was really neat to see the look on his face.
Yeah, and last thing, really the lead up to it was pretty cool too. I mean, because the way Jerry started talking about one other player on the board, for a minute there, I thought you'd changed your mind. So, but no, just to reiterate what everybody said. In 30 years, in 30 years of this league, I've never seen anything like that. That was a very special moment.
we didn't rehearse, we really did not rehearse that moment. And frankly, the more I got into talking about some other players we were considering, and I looked over there and I said, you are going to have a heart attack on your hands. This is too much. This is not, is this for our enjoyment, or is this what it is? So it was so emotional and became emotional that you just quit the kidding about 2 sentences in. But we did want to kind of have that surprise for it. And we kidded around. You know, they used to turn a card in. So I was trying to jack with, well, do we have the card? And Chris,
It's automated.
automated said, it's automated. And I said, well, use a napkin, and use a napkin. Okay, Chris, you want to turn it in here for Deuce on the deal. But my point is, the more you started talking about it, then everybody in there started welling up, and it became that type of thing. Totally unanticipated as far as the emotion of the moment and what had happened. Now, we knew that was pretty serious business to be there talking about somebody's son that truly deserved to be picked and not, and was, in my mind, that's the most important thing to understand. He is a very, very, as far as a college player, he deserved to be drafted, and just exactly earlier, or that right there, he deserved to be drafted. Well, that's a big deal right there when you get into that, and then you're sitting there as a father agonizing over how it would go. And I know y'all have heard his comment when he got on there, but his voice broke when he called his son and said, son, you're going to be coming to work with me tomorrow.
And precedent
Great
has
time.
now been set because Gaby's, about 6-7 years,
Yeah, well, the thing about it is, his boy, I'm going to back him in the movies because as good looking as he
You guys
is,
look from your
we
daddy.
don't need to mess around here.
Yeah.
What does it say about Chris that he wanted this to be, I don't want to know what you think. I want this to be as fair as possible, the integrity and all that kind of stuff in him.
Just for me, it tells you who the guy is. He always goes about his work in such a professional manner. There are guys that he used to coach with that are now sources of his and all that. So he's used to gathering information, knows what's going to be said about kids as we dig, and the opinions that come out. And he wanted to make it as pure as possible, and not get in the way of us, making a decision or letting our feelings be said about his son, and just the way that he approached it. And again, the greatest thing was the card thing, and when Jerry threw the napkin at him, he told him about it. You realize that it's just how important it was to him, how much it meant to him, and just how great of a man and a father he is to raise a son like that and to be a part of it and to step aside. I'm going to be right in the middle of it. When Gaby comes up in a little while, I'm going to be right in the middle of it.
Well, I'll say this. You said something there that hit me. It's one thing. Chris is such a really, really competent professional. He's just really one of the more impressive people that I've been around in scouting, and we can all give our opinion there. He knew he should be drafted. He knew that he can play. And so this isn't like wondering if your boy can play in college or something. He knew it because that's what he do, is decide whether they can play or not. So he knew it, and he also knew whether or not he could help us or not. And so that's quite a bank of knowledge to be sitting there with your son, future being considered like that. So the whole validity of the thing is what's impressive to me.
John Michaud, The Athletic. When did you guys first talk about it? Like, when did you think that, hey, because I know you kind of wanted to keep it away from Chris, and that was it at the beginning of the 6th round? Was it last night? When did that kind of come together where you were kind of like, hey, this might happen if Deuce is still there? For any of you.
Well, Deuce was on our board, and Deuce was on our board, but we get into that all the time. I don't want to show you the board, but Deuce was on our board higher. Okay? And that's no, he was on the board, in that sense. So he's been discussed, and he was very candid. Chris was very candid about his evaluation of when he talked about him. He said, I do have a perspective here because I've raised him. And he does this, he does that, he has this, he has that. And I mean, he was as bam, bam, bam as if he were sitting here talking about Emmitt Smith.
He had, we had 35 picks between Scott and when we picked. And that was when probably the heavy discussions, which we always do, kind of now that we've picked who's in the mix now. And that's when we kind of started breaking off and having some discussions that weren't in the bigger room. And they were outstanding discussions with the offensive coaches, with our scouts, with obviously Will leading the way there, from that standpoint, but Mike and Coach Schottenheimer and their vision for him and, how he compared to other players that he was going to be put up against in terms of, who else would be in the mix there at that pick.
He legitimately, when we started draft day 3 days ago, he was sitting higher than he was drafted. And that's without any emotion. That was with pure evaluation input. I think that's fair to say, don't you, guys?
Yes.
He was the highest one on the board
When we drafted.
number one. For a while.
Snyder Dixon with DAB. Stephen, you mentioned the look on his face. How would you describe the look on Chris's face?
The look on whose face?
Chris's face when
Oh, it was just all sorts of emotion, which I can imagine. I mean, I had a competitive athlete for a son and had a lot of great things happen for him and me, and so I could relate from right here. You know how it is. Now this is a whole nother level getting ready to, and as Jerry said, he's so well deserved. I mean, this guy's one of the best football players in the country, period. When you go to the pros, unfortunately, they start taking into account things like your height and your weight. But I'll tell you one thing, you watch him run through Alabama's defense, breaking ankles and doing the things that he did, it'll make a believer out of you in a hurry. So, it's just, but looking at, Chris in the face, it was just, he couldn't believe it. I mean, it's just straight emotion, which I certainly can relate to.
Mike, as a player, how do you envision him? Have you had a player like him before in your time?
Jerry and I were talking about this earlier. I think clearly, Deuce can play the normal flow of our offense first and second down. I think the stating the obvious, as far as the protection component, we got to, work together there. But there's some very distinct situational thoughts and concepts that I have in mind already. Randall Cobbish type things I've done in the past. So, yeah, we'll definitely have, opportunities for him to take advantage of his productivity. I mean, he's a dynamic player.
Schottenheimer was at San Diego when they drafted Sproles. Continually have comparisons there.
You guys drafted a tackle today. How do you see him going forward?
He's awesome. Just awesome.
Name
No,
awesome.
I mean, yeah, both. I mean, he's definitely has position flex. So, and I think, the biggest thing is, as we talk repeatedly in here, is the ability to play tackle and move down the guard. I mean, position flex is so important. The numbers are clear. You have to have that. The 17th game of the season's clear. I mean, I talk about it all the time. I know it's been said over and over again. I thought the way we really put the emphasis on the line of scrimmage was excellent, and that was part of it.
On the Senior Bowl, play a little bit of guard. How much did that kind of give you more confidence to say, okay, he can do that for us?
He's played some guard in college, guard and tackle. So seeing him do both positions gives you the confidence to do it. And he's got NFL-type body. He's got 35-inch arms. So the things that you look for, they're all there to be able to play outside and inside.
He also, right center. He played. I mean, they worked him out as a center down at the pro workout day, and actually Brian was and the scouts were there, and he had a heck of a day.
Anybody else? Okay.
With Scott and the trade up for him, he said he filmed a YouTube thing that you guys wanted to see a little bit more of him.
Yeah.
What was? Can you kind of walk us
Well,
through that?
you go to his pro day and he jumps 39, but he pulls his quad. But he goes and runs the 40. Most people pull up and stop. So when you go to those pro days, you look at that stuff. You want to see all the movement and all the things to confirm what you see on tape. But you also want to see who the guys are. Well, you go run a 40, and he pulls his quad like in the first couple steps, and then he finishes it out. So there was concerns about his speed or questions because we didn't have a confirmed time. They sent that out, but we also have other information that tells us how fast he plays. So we were securing his time and how well he played. But just that clip that they sent a little bit more confirmation that we were right on that.
You kind of look over the past few years about the athletic profile you like in your defensive players. Fehoko doesn't necessarily fit what we've seen in some ways. Is it primarily his production, his versatility, or what did you like about him specifically?
His ability to get after the quarterback and make big plays. You look at his stats, you look at his production, you look at the tape. He does some unique things and getting edges, winning, attacking the football when he goes after the quarterback. He's got a mission when he goes, when he gets off on the snap, he gets off on the ball and he makes big plays.
Yeah, I'll just also say the play style. I mean, it's position flex, and you look at all four of the defensive players that we drafted. Number one is the play style, and they're and it's good that they have it coming in here because that's definitely been established.
He's a big guy too, big frame, and has got a chance to actually be an inside guy as he evolves in his career, which they usually do and can lean toward getting bigger. So that was a big plus too. Unique motor.
Will, on the fourth round guys, since you've taken over the draft, obviously there's Dak, but you guys have had a lot of success there, Schultz and other guys like that. Why do you think that you guys have been able to have that success in the fourth round?
I think we stick to our board. We hopefully value them the right way. And in that fourth round, we've got a definition that fits that fourth round. It's a guy that can come in and play and potentially start. And if they achieve that, then we're hitting a home run. I think those guys, when you go in the first three rounds, people are looking for the prototype, all that. Well, when the prototype runs out, you continue to go and look for football players that have the traits to play the position that you want them to play. And, you get those guys in the fourth round, and we've been fortunate to have some of those pan out for us.
Jerry, what do you do at kicker?
We get one that's more likely to have the yipes, and yips, whatever. No, we'll be looking at more of a veteran kicker.
Was kicker one guy you wanted to come out of this, and they went before you guys had them? Is that how it worked out?
Yes.
Is Maher a possibility to be coming back with how he ended the year? He's available.
Yeah, and that's probably getting a little too into our strategies there a little bit. And obviously we want to come up with the best solution that we can there. But we didn't get the kicker or the kicker opportunity that we thought we might get in the draft. And we had other priorities. When we had a chance to get it, we took somebody else, obviously.
Mike, I know you talked before about liking to have a young developmental quarterback in the building. Mm-hmm. Did you hope to get that today, and the way it broke, they just weren't there at the time you intended to take them? Or?
Definitely. I mean, there was definitely some guys we really liked. But, I think the other thing, too, is, as I recall, I think every one of these young men, all 8 of them were the highest ranked player on the board. And just going off of Jerry's and Will's point, the trust of the board, was right on the money, all 3 days. So, but yeah, I mean, I really like the progress Will Greer has made. He's been here the whole time. So, obviously Cooper is, gives us that veteran, presence and everything. So it's a very healthy room, but Having a fourth quarterback is a little bit more of a challenge in today's NFL than it was, years ago. So, I mean, all those things factor into it.
Brooks looks like Brooks took a long way to get to where he is.
Mm-hmm.
How did you guys find him? I know there was an All-Star game he played in. I don't know if some of that helped or the college tape.
The scout that goes in the area, we have these meetings we go through. They have a feeling about the player. You talk about them in the room. We talk about the traits that they have and how they fit. I mean, he's a guy that can play inside and outside. Incredible journey to get to where he is and to get to here. You know that achiever part's in him, and you know that there's more upside to him.
Nick Harris, DallasCowboys.com. It seemed that the theme was versatility around most of these picks. Was that something that was an emphasis going into the draft?
I mean, I think it's like anything. We talk a lot about each player having the ability to do at least two things. Position flex, special teams contribution. Because just like anything, when we get to the end of this, we'll pick 53, and then primarily we'll try to pull all of our guys onto the practice squad, and then the challenge is always the 48. And that's what it comes down to. Just the versatility of those players that are down there in 45, 46, 47, 48 on a Sunday roster.
Haley Sutton, DallasCowboys.com. Jerry and Steven, kind of a fun one for you. Going back to Deuce Vaughn, as someone who works in the family, you work with your son, and Steven, you work with your dad. Do you have any advice for Chris on working with Deuce coming up?
Well,
Feel free to chime in.
I don't want to say this as though Chris and Deuce don't have this. Okay, but I heard I'm gonna paraphrase a father's prayer, and prayer is, "Don't let me be a bully, because I can be, because he loves me. Don't let me do that." And so that's the way it goes. My father was not a bully at all. But to give you an idea, after I bought the Cowboys about 5 years, not that it was a particular day or anything, but to show you the influence he had. He was 5'6", had a size 7.5 shoe. He made me cry criticizing me 5 years after I bought the Cowboys. I thought I was getting a little big for my britches. So, that parent thing and that relationship right there is precious, and it's not perfect at all. But I'd say this, Deuce and Chris, that boy's outstanding. He's outstanding in many, many ways. And so I'd be careful criticizing Chris about how to be a daddy.
I think Chris will be the first to say it. He knows Chris works for Mike and his running back coach and Coach Schottenheimer before he has to get down to Chris.
I'm gonna say this. It didn't influence. I mean, it is a real plus that Chris is here for us and Deuce. We got maybe two there that they're going to be on top of things. I think he said it the best. We're going to get to go to work together Monday, son.
Last one, Dave.
Yeah, Jerry, I know you like to say that all the good picks are yours and all the bad ones are Stevens and Will's. This is for the three of you except for Will. Because of what you have done recently, especially since Will's had more of a voice in the draft, can you talk about his voice has grown and maybe give examples of how he just has a greater role in how you set the board and how you go about decisions and how it's evolved to the point it is now, I guess, with Will?
I think I'm going to leave the room.
No. We're not driving here. Well, let me say this. I'm fortunate in that I've known Will a long time, back in the arena days when he was coach arena football. The main reason that Will got my attention because he played at Rice, And when I went to school, we weren't smart enough to go to Rice down there. So really, I've always had a lot of respect for Will. I've appreciated his relationship with my children, which he had in a more in-depth way, and consequently, they're his biggest supporters in terms of as a person. And then the idea that he's coming here and evolved, and I say evolved, because I really, if you want a definition of what's happened to everything I've been involved in with the Cowboys, is it has evolved. It's just not the same person sitting there that was there 10 years ago. But in my mind, Will has evolved into something that possibly is unique to the NFL. And he has people skills that are really outstanding. And you're sitting up here, he has relationships with coaches and relationships. A lot of that sector has a competitive aspect to it sometimes. And it's still there. In other words, guys, I'm going to draft him, play him, coach. Or, look, you draft him, I'll play him, that type of thing. And so that's very important that mesh and meld. And the fact that these guys operate the way they operate together, Coach and Will, is, from my perspective, they can speak for themselves about how they operate together. But from my perspective, it really is a comfortable thing to know that they can have the working relationship and the relationship that they have. So it's a real people thing. It is very unique. You don't have to be blind to know that I like it when I've got people I know around me. And so I prefer that, and a lot of other people do too. They just can't do it. I get to do it, and so I get to have Will as long as he's willing to around me, because it works as well as it does. There's no question that the way we approach the draft, the way we basically assemble, and the way we ultimately make a decision, it's so comforting to make it when you know that you've got the right, not right, but that you've got the makeup of the information you've got. That's the way that I feel when I look at that. We don't blink. We look at that and we go over, and when we need to hear about a player again, it's that information that is there. Information is it. It's critical in making a decision. There's no human being living that can pick the football player, okay, that can tell you they can't pick. Some of the greatest ever. If I thought there was one person that could walk up there and just every time pick all 11 of your ball players, everything would be good, okay? But there are people better than others that do the right things to give them the best chance to recommend and pick the football player. And so I think that all of that is what Will is about. Needless to say, Stephen would lay in front of the train for Will relative to what he means to this organization. And obviously that has everything that's critical here and critical for me. So he enjoys absolute through the coach, but just as more important through Stephen. From my perspective, he enjoys a chain of how we make decisions around here that is completely valid and strong, and you can make decisions on it. And so I mean, you have to make a decision. Have we made some decisions we'd like to have back? Well, of course we have. Of course we have. But we're doing good. Just to sit here right now and what have you, we're 3 years into this guy, going on 4. I don't know about you, but I feel better than I felt in a long time about what's around the corner for the Dallas Cowboys. This guy sitting here, this guy sitting there, and that guy over there, working with all of them, is the best I've felt about things. I love this team I'm sitting up here with.
Good. Great one to end on. There you go.